All right, guys, welcome back to another video. It's your man Jay Will. So I'm going to answer this question that a lot of people have asked me to answer. Which one of these phones do I prefer, the G7 or the brand new OnePlus 6T? Now, the first thing I want to say is I would tell a person to grab the 6 over the 6T in a heartbeat, because check the links in the description. You can get this phone for a very low cost, and like under 500. It's like 460, 470, something like that. All the colors are probably still available, so grab this red if you can get it. Wow. Now, but this is a question I haven't gotten very many questions about. Should I get the 6 over the G7? Because the 6T is new, but it's still the 6, man. It's just got a few tweaks. So let's start. Let's get the same old rundown I always do: hardware and design. Remember, this is my experience, my personal opinion. You can disagree if you want to. I really don't care. I'm not going to argue with you in the comments about which one is better. If you like it, I love it. So if you like the G7 better, good for you. If you like the 6T better, great for you. So we're going to start with hardware and design with the Challenger here. This mirror black has grown on me. You know what I'm saying? I like it, but I definitely am putting a skin on this. I've already ordered my skin, so look for that video later on. You know, the mirror, the phone itself pretty much runs the same design as this, and these are both 19.5 by 9 aspect ratio phones, so they're really way more narrow than a normal phone. They got the camera set up on the back here. It looks the same as that. This one doesn't have a fingerprint reader on the back. It actually has it in the screen right there, so you can see as I open that up. The screen on this thing is absolutely gorgeous. 6.4-inch display, AMOLED. They're calling it optic AMOLED or whatever. I don't care about that. It's a great looking display. I mean, it is very, very nice, and it's full. It's nice. I love it. You get the alert slider, which is something I feel like all Android phones should have, because iPhones already have it. iPhones have pretty much always had it. You've got to get that alert slider on Android phones. It's just a must. No headphone jack, but you do get Type-C. No SD card. But you do get 128 gigs on the base model of this phone, which comes in 6 gigs. This is the 8 gig 128 gig model, and it goes all the way up to 8 gigs and 256 gigs. So this is a very nice phone. The hardware is sweet. I don't like the shiny, slippery fingerprints on there, so obviously, like I said, I'm going to kill that off with a skin. But the hardware on this thing is beautiful. No ifs, ands, or buts, man. Now, it doesn't have wireless charging. It doesn't have an IP rating. You know, so that's just what it is. Let's move over to the G7. Now, the G7 does have a headphone jack, it does have an IP rating, and it does have wireless charging. And that's some of the perks of having the G7. You get an actual physical fingerprint reader. It does have facial recognition, but it's nowhere as fast as the OnePlus 6T. As you can see there, how slow it is to open. But you do get a 6.1-inch display. And you know, it's a quad HD display. I don't like it better than the 6T, but we'll get into that later. But you do have an SD card slot on here. This is 4 gigs of RAM with 64 gigs onboard storage, and you know, this is what the G7 is offering. This is still a very beautiful design. So hardware and the way this phone looks and feels in hand, it feels just like this phone in the hand. It's just that it might look a little better. And you know, it's got this flat matte back on here, and you're also getting a headphone jack, wireless charging. You know, it's the design and hardware, not because of the wireless charging and the headphone jack, but I just like the way this phone looks. But you know, you do get those options. You do get wireless charging and a headphone jack. So I give the first part of this video, design and hardware, to the G7. I still like the way this phone looks. Everything about it, I really like it, man. So let's go ahead and jump right over to screens, since I just brought that up. Now, here is the screen on both of these. Now, over video, you probably can't tell much difference. You know, you're probably thinking, wow, you know, this, you know, it looks decent, you know. So I've got the people often ask me what I'm recording with sometimes. If it's not a front-facing or forward behind the camera view, that, you know, it's my Canon SL2. The other videos like that are with the GoPro Hero 7 Black, but this is the Canon SL2 mounted with the 24mm lens, for those that always ask. Now, the screen on here, I'll cut to the chase. I like the screen on the 6T better, straight up. It's bigger, but the phone is not that much bigger. This is a 6.1 and this is a 6.4 inch display. So you know, these pretty much feel the same in the hand. This is a little bit more narrow, but this is very narrow. But the screen, when watching videos and things like that, the 6T kills it, man. It's really, really nice. I just don't have any complaints. This is a Quad HD display too. Remember, guys, it's not because it's IPS. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's because it's IPS display. This AMOLED display just looks fantastic. I really, really like it. That's just my opinion on it. You can say which one you like better. You know, it is what it is. Now, battery life on these both have great standby time, but this one has a bigger battery, obviously. This has a 3,000 milliamp hour battery, and this phone gets great battery life, man. This one has a 3,700 milliamp hour battery though, and you know, this one is kicking in more like 7 to 8 hours of screen on time. I can consistently get about 7 if I want to, but then I'm also over 24 hours for charging. You know what I'm saying? This phone right here, same thing. I can get close to 24 or more, 28, 29, depends on how I'm feeling that day. But I'm not getting 7 hours of screen on time, and I'm not regularly getting 6.5 hours of screen on time. I might get between 5.5 and 6 regularly. So battery life goes to the OnePlus 6T. You know, it's just what it is. Performance is something that, well, I'm not even going to clown the G7 for that. It happens to all phones at some point or another. But this phone is running Android Pie, and it's got 8 gigs of RAM. This has 4 gigs of RAM, and it's running Android Oreo. They both have a Snapdragon 845. So, you know, overall, I mean, I just think Pie does it for phones, because my Pixel 3 runs like a champ, man. This phone runs, it's going so fast. You see that? The Pixel 3 is a boss with 4 gigs of RAM on Android Pie, but it's stock Android, you know what I'm saying? So I think stock Android is what does it for these phones, man. Stock Android is what does it for these phones, and I don't take that back. I think that this phone runs circles around the G7 when it comes to performance, and it's because it has double the RAM and Android Pie. So what would happen if this phone had Android Pie? I still don't think it would run as fast as this phone, because it's not going to be stock Android. It's got their overlay. You know what I'm saying? That's just what it is. So performance and everything, it just goes to the 6T. Now let's take a look at cameras, because I'm sure you guys are really excited to know about that. All right, guys, so here is 1080p at 60 FPS on the OnePlus 6T and the LG G7. You can decide what you think is better in quality. Both of these phones have really good recordings for microphones, so I'll just choose whichever one I want to use for microphone. But the G7 does very well at 60 frames per second, and the OnePlus 6T does fantastic at 60 frames per second. So I'm just going to walk down here. As far as stabilization goes, I don't think they claim to have stabilization throughout on the 60 frames per second. Definitely at 30 frames per second. But you can choose which one you like better. I'm not going to get into a battle or argument in the comments with you guys on which one is better. I'll just give you my opinion on it after the fact. When I look through the viewfinder, I like the OnePlus 6T better. The OnePlus 6T looks sharper through the viewfinder and a little bit more crisp. Colors are pretty much accurate on both of these. They're pretty decent, but the OnePlus 6T is a little bit more accurate. Look at the details on the football, and you tell me what you like better. Anyway, 1080p at 60 FPS, OnePlus 6T, and LG G7. All right, guys, so here's the front cameras on both of these phones, and you just tell me which one you think looks better. When I look through the viewfinder, this is a tough one, but I definitely give it to the OnePlus 6T. You can see all the gray hairs in my beard, the definition. Just check that out. I like the OnePlus 6T better at this moment. All right, what do you guys think about the cameras? I personally give it to the 6T. I think the 6T's cameras just perform a tad bit better. I did 1080p at 60 FPS because, you know, they both do 4K at 60 FPS, but I don't think it's really necessary to put both of these out at 4K 60 FPS. 1080p at 60 FPS is more of a realistic thing that people will do on YouTube regularly. Even though I like the 4K at 60 FPS better on the 6T, I didn't feel the need to make a video stating that. I just tell you that I like the 4K at 60 FPS better. And overall, I like the experience for the cameras on the 6T better. That's just me. I like it better. I think the quality is a little bit more sharp, more crisp, more vivid. But that's just my opinion. You looked at the footage. What do you think about it? Now, overall, which one of these phones would I recommend to a person right now? I would say if you need wireless charging, if you need an IP rating, if you need a headphone jack, in these two phones, grab the G7, obviously. But in fact, if you just don't need wireless charging, I would tell you to get this phone over both of these phones, because this phone pretty much is this phone with a headphone jack and a physical fingerprint reader. Seriously, you know, it's the better of all of these phones as far as a logical choice. I'm not saying that it's better than this phone or better, and I'm saying in general, this is the logical choice I would tell a person to make over both of these phones. But if you didn't have that phone, or you already have the 6 and when you bought this, you were thinking about buying one of these, I'm going to tell you to go with the 6T. Here's why. You're going to get fast updates for your software. And software nowadays, if optimized correctly, it's going to get you some great performance. I mean, this phone performs like a champ. It's got 8 gigs of RAM. You know, this phone has 8 gigs of RAM. You know, the 128 gigs on onboard storage. Yeah, this doesn't have an SD card slot. This doesn't have a wireless charging in the back. It doesn't have a headphone jack. I already told you the alternative to that. I'm telling you, the in-screen fingerprint reader is quick, as you can see. The overall experience on this phone is better for me. The G6 feels a little sluggish next to this phone. Even though this phone is fast, next to this phone, it feels sluggish. And I know it's just because it's running at 845 with 8 gigs of RAM, man. It's just no getting around that. This phone is a true champ. It's a good phone, man. It's a good phone. In another video, I called it, you know, the new king, and people get so sensitive about that, man. It's just tags, man. It's just something to get you to pique your interest and get you to click on the video. Really, that's all it is. But it is one of the new kings. I can't front. You know, these two phones right here, along with my Pixel 3, man. I got a killer lineup, folks. I got a killer lineup, you know, but the OnePlus 6T over the G6 for sure. There you have it. I think the pricing on this is more than fair. If I wanted a 256 gig model, I can get it. This doesn't have an SD card slot, like I said. This does. This has wireless charging, a headphone jack over it, but still, the alternative to that is the 6. If you just have to have that, but if you don't, the 6T is an easy win for me over the G7. So there you have it. It's your man Jay Will. Hope you enjoyed. See you in the next video. Take care.